Jake Morrison stood in the center of the massive chamber and tried not to look nervous. Around him, creatures from across the galaxy filled seats that stretched up toward the ceiling, like a mountain made of glass and metal. Some of the beings looked almost human, while others were so strange that Jake had to force himself not to stare. The translation device in his ear buzzed with hundreds of different languages, all talking at once. Clicks, whistles, electronic beeps, and sounds he could not even describe mixed together into a constant noise. The chamber was so big that Jake could barely see the far walls, and the ceiling disappeared into darkness above. Ambassador Jake had been Earth's voice in the galactic community for 3 years. He was a good diplomat, patient and careful with his words. But today felt different. Today felt like the end of something important. High Arbiter Vel Thuk rose from his seat on the judgment platform. The insect-like creature was twice as tall as Jake, with 4 arms and mandibles that clicked when he spoke. His voice came through the translators as cold and formal. The Galactic Council will now hear the charges against the species known as humanity, Vel Thuk announced. The chamber fell quiet except for the soft hum of the translation machines. Jake watched as a holographic display appeared above his head, showing images of human colonies across the galaxy. Green worlds with cities and farms, mining stations, around distant asteroids, and ships moving between the stars like streams of light. In the 53 years since first contact, Vel Thuk continued, humanity has violated 17 major galactic accords. They have colonized 200 worlds without proper authorization. They have developed weapons technology that exceeds safety limits. They have interfered with primitive species without council approval. The images changed to show human terraforming equipment turning dead rocks into living worlds. Jake felt a flash of pride watching the transformation, but the murmur from the gallery told him the other species saw it differently. Most seriously, Vel Thuk's mandibles clicked faster. Humanity refuses to accept the established galactic hierarchy. They operate their colonies independently. They make decisions without consulting the proper authorities. They expand at a rate that threatens the stability our civilization has maintained for thousands of years. Captain Lisa Hayes watched the trial from her ship, the Defiance, in orbit above the planet. She was supposed to be exploring an ancient artifact in the Outer Rim, but like everyone else in the human fleet, she had stopped everything to watch the proceedings. They're really going to do it, said Dr. Ben Carter, looking up from his archaeological equipment. They're going to exile us. Lieutenant Amy Torres shook her head in disgust. 53 years of cooperation, and this is what we get. My family was among the first colonists on New Terra. We helped build this galactic community. Lisa kept her eyes on the screen, showing Jake standing alone in that massive chamber. We knew this day might come. Humans have never been good at following other people's rules. Back in the council chamber, species after species stood to present. Evidence against humanity. The Zephyrian delegate, a floating jellyfish-like creature, showed data about human expansion rates. Where most species took a century to establish 12 colonies, humans had built 200 in half that time. The crystalline, Vorthan representative displayed charts showing human weapons development, while other species used energy weapons that stunned or disabled. Humans had created projectile weapons, explosives, and kinetic bombardment systems that could crack planets. But the most damaging testimony came from the ethereal collective, energy beings who rarely spoke in council meetings. Their representative appeared as a shimmering cloud of light that pulsed with each word. Humanity uplifts primitive species without permission, the ethereal stated. They share technology with civilizations that have not earned advancement. They ignore quarantine zones established for good reason. They treat the galaxy as their playground rather than a community with rules. Jake waited for his turn to speak. When Vel Thuk finally called on him, he stepped forward calmly. Honored council members, Jake began. Humanity acknowledges that. We are different. We expand quickly because we have to. Earth is one small world, and we are a growing species. We develop new technologies because innovation is part of who we are. We help primitive species because we remember when we were primitive ourselves, and other species helped us. He paused, looking around the chamber at the hundreds of alien faces watching him. You say we don't follow the established hierarchy. You're right. We don't understand why some species should have more rights than others, just because they joined the galaxy first. We don't understand why exploration should be limited, or why new ideas should be feared. The chamber erupted in angry sounds. Delegates clicked, chirped, and buzzed their disapproval. Velthak struck his gavel repeatedly to restore order. The defendant will restrict himself to facts, not philosophy, the High Arbiter warned. Jake nodded. The facts are simple. Humanity has never attacked another species unprovoked. We have never enslaved anyone or destroyed inhabited worlds. We have shared our discoveries and technologies freely. If our crime is being different, then we are guilty. The voting began immediately. One by one, species announced their decision. The Corvani Empire voted for Exile. The Hegemony of Worlds voted for Exile. The Ancient Order voted for Exile. Each vote felt like a hammer blow to Jake's chest. On the Defiance, Lisa watched the votes pile up. 834 for. Exile, she said quietly. 13 abstentions. 0 against. Dr. Carter looked shocked. Not one species voted to keep us. Would you? Amy asked bitterly. We scare them. We change too fast, build too much, ask too many questions. We make them uncomfortable just by existing. Velthak announced the final verdict. By overwhelming majority, the Galactic Council orders the immediate exile of humanity from all civilized space. You have 1 standard year to remove all colonies, ships, and citizens to the region beyond the galactic boundary. Any human presence remaining after that time will be considered an act of war. The chamber fell silent as Jake stepped forward one last time. His voice was quiet, but it carried clearly through the vast space. We came to you as friends and partners, he said, looking directly at Velthak. We offered to share what we had, learned, and to learn from you in return. We hoped to build something better together. He turned slowly, meeting the gaze of as many delegates as he could see. Instead, you have chosen to exile us for being ourselves. Very well, we accept your decision. But understand this. We leave as something you have never encountered before. We leave as free people who will make our own way in the universe. Jake walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the silent chamber. As he reached the door, he stopped and looked back one final time. You wanted us gone. Consider it done, but don't expect us to disappear quietly. The massive doors closed behind him with a sound like thunder. Admiral Rick Stone stood on the bridge of the New Horizon and watched the greatest migration in galactic history unfold before his eyes. 6 months had passed since the trial, and humanity was not running away in panic like the Council expected. They were moving with purpose and precision that amazed even Rick himself. Status report, Colonel, Rick said to his strategic advisor, Kate Phillips. Kate looked at her datapad and smiled grimly. Sector 7 evacuation is complete. We've stripped everything useful from 12 colonies and moved 2 million people. To the transport ships, the worlds are bare rock now. Through the massive viewports of the colony ship, Rick could see the Exodus fleet stretching in all directions. Thousands of ships carried entire cities that had been taken apart piece by piece. Cargo vessels hauled mining equipment, factories, and even whole forests the humans had planted on distant worlds. They thought we would leave crying and begging, Kate said. Instead, we're taking everything we built, and leaving them nothing. On the planet below, Dr. Emma Foster supervised the final phase of what she called planetary reclamation. Her teams had spent weeks undoing decades of terraforming work. Atmosphere processors that had taken years to create breathable air were dismantled in days. Irrigation systems that had brought water to desert worlds were shut down and removed. "It's almost finished," Emma told her assistant over the radio. "Another 6 hours and this world will be exactly as it was before humans arrived." The assistant's voice crackled back. "Seems like a waste, Doctor. This was a beautiful world." Emma looked across the barren landscape that had once been green. Fields and crystal cities. Better a waste than a gift to people who exiled us. They wanted us gone, so we're taking our miracles with us. The scope of human civilization surprised everyone, including the humans themselves. The Galactic Council had known about the official colonies, but as the exodus continued, they discovered that humanity had been busy. Research stations hidden in asteroid belts were evacuated. Mining operations in the empty space between stars were dismantled. Waypoints and supply depots that no one knew existed were cleaned out completely. Captain Lisa Hayes continued her work in the Outer Rim, but now her mission had changed completely. The ancient artifact her team had been studying was responding to human presence in ways that made no sense. "Dr. Carter, look at this," Lieutenant Amy Torres called from her station. "The artifact is glowing brighter every time more humans enter the system." Dr. Ben Carter hurried over to examine the readings. "That's impossible. We've tested this thing for months. It never reacted to any other species, barely responded to us before. But now, the artifact, a smooth black sphere, the size of a small building, pulsed with golden light. Energy readings were off the charts, and new symbols were appearing on its surface. "Amy, call your grandmother on New Terra," Ben said suddenly. "Ask her about that old necklace she wears." Amy looked confused, but made the call. When her grandmother appeared on the screen, Ben noticed the small pendant around her neck immediately. "Mrs. Torres, may I ask where you got that necklace?" The old woman smiled. "Found it in the ruins when we were first building the colony. Pretty little thing. Always felt warm to the touch." Ben's eyes went wide. "Amy, that's not a necklace. That's another artifact piece." Across human space, similar discoveries were happening. Colonists were finding that family heirlooms and lucky charms, collected over the decades, were actually pieces of ancient technology. When brought together, these artifacts resonated with each other and with human DNA in ways that seemed impossible. Galactic Council watched the exodus with growing unease. They had expected humans to struggle with losing their colonies and trade networks. Instead, the humans seemed energized by the challenge. High Arbiter Vel Thak received daily reports that confused him more each day. "They are stripping their worlds completely," his aide reported. "Not just taking their belongings, but removing every trace of their presence. Some colonies are returning to pre-terraformed states." "And their destination?" Velthek asked. "The region beyond the galactic boundary. The area we designated as uninhabitable due to unstable star formations and dangerous energy fields." Velthek's mandibles clicked nervously. Surely they cannot survive there. But humans were already proving them wrong. The first scout ships to reach the boundary region sent back reports that excited rather than frightened them. The chaotic space that other species found deadly was exactly what human engineers had learned to work with. Commander Alex Brooks piloted his ship through a field of unstable gravity waves that would have torn apart any council vessel. "This is incredible," he radioed back to the fleet. "The energy readings are unlike anything we've seen, but our ships handle it perfectly." His ship, equipped with human engineering that emphasized adaptability over precision, rode the gravity waves like a surfer riding ocean swells. Where other species built rigid systems that broke under stress, humans had always designed flexible systems that bent without breaking. The Exodus revealed another truth that worried the Council. Humanity had not just been expanding rapidly. They had been innovating constantly. Every human colony had developed new technologies, new solutions to problems, new ways of living that other species had never imagined. Dr. Emma Foster's terraforming techniques could turn a dead world into a garden in months instead of centuries. Human agricultural methods produced more food with less space than any other species achieved. Human manufacturing processes were so efficient that single colonies outproduced entire alien worlds. And now, all of that innovation was leaving with them. We may have made a mistake, one council member admitted during a closed session. The humans provided solutions to problems we didn't even know we had. Trade routes that had depended on human efficiency were already showing problems. Worlds that had imported human food were facing shortages. Technologies that humans had shared freely were no longer available for improvement or repair. But the most disturbing discovery was yet to come. As human ships reached the galactic boundary, they made contact with something the Council had never known existed. Captain Lisa Hayes received the first transmission from beyond the boundary. It came from Commander Alex Brooks, but his message contained information that changed everything. Captain Hayes, you need to see this. The boundary isn't empty space. There are structures here. Massive structures that our computers say are older than the current galactic civilization. And they're responding to our presence. Lisa looked at the artifact still glowing on her ship. Ben, I think we've found where these came from. The pieces were starting to fit together. The artifacts that humans had been collecting for decades were not random alien technology. They were keys left behind by whoever had built the structures beyond the boundary. And for some reason, those keys only worked for humans. As the last human ships crossed into exile, they carried with them not just the refugees of 200 worlds, but the tools to unlock secrets that the galaxy had never imagined. The Council had voted to exile Earth's children to the empty wilderness beyond civilization. Instead, they had sent humanity home. 1 year after the exile vote, Commander Alex Brooks stood on the bridge of humanity's new flagship, the Architect's Dream, and smiled at the message he was about to send back to the galaxy. The ship floated in space that should have killed everyone aboard, but instead had become humanity's new home. "Are you ready to record?" asked his communications officer, Lieutenant Danny Walsh. "Ready?" Alex replied. He looked out at the view that still amazed him every day. 7 unstable stars danced around each other in patterns that defied physics, their coronas streaming energy in colors that had no names. Floating in that deadly light were human cities that sparkled like jewels. "This is Commander Brooks speaking. For humanity from the Wild Zone," he began. "1 year ago, you exiled us here because you said this region was uninhabitable. We're calling to thank you." The message would take weeks to reach the galaxy, but Alex knew it would create chaos when it arrived. Dr. Sarah Mitchell worked in her laboratory built inside the corona of an unstable star. The energy that other species found destructive was perfect for her research. She had unlocked more secrets of the ancient artifacts in 1 year than the Galactic Council had discovered in thousands. The architects weren't just another alien species, she explained to her research team. They were like us. They faced the same choice we did: conform to galactic standards or leave to find their own path. Her assistant, Dr. Mark Johnson, held up one of the golden artifacts that had been humming with power since they entered the Wild Zone. "So they chose exile too?" "They chose freedom," Sarah corrected. "And they left these tools behind for others who would make the same choice. The artifacts only work for species that refuse to be controlled." Outside the laboratory, the city of New Hope floated in space without any visible support. Buildings grew like crystal formations, each one adapted to the strange physics of the wild zone. Gardens spiraled through zero gravity, their plants fed by the raw energy of dying stars. Captain Ryan Murphy commanded the exploration fleets that mapped their new territory. His ships were built with a combination of human engineering and architect technology that created vessels unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Captain, you need to see this," called his navigator, Lieutenant Carroll Davis. "The sensor readings don't make sense." Ryan looked at the display and felt his breath catch. Beyond the chaotic star cluster that hid their new colonies, space itself seemed to fold and twist. "What are we looking at?" "It's a gateway, sir. The wild zone isn't just empty space between galaxies. It's a crossroads. Those energy readings suggest there are passages to other galaxies, maybe hundreds of them." The discovery changed everything. The region that the Galactic Council considered a wasteland was actually the most important location in the universe. The architects hadn't been exiled here. They had chosen it as their base of operations for exploring infinite space. Engineer Tony Rodriguez supervised the construction of Freedom's Gate, humanity's first megastructure in the wild zone. The massive ring station orbited the 7 dancing stars, drawing power from their chaotic energy patterns. "The design violates every engineering principle the galaxy teaches," Tony explained to his team. "Galactic engineers build rigid structures that resist change. We build flexible systems that adapt to change. Out here, adaptation is survival." The station's construction methods looked impossible. Sections of the ring existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, allowing them to be larger inside than outside. Parts of the structure phased in and out of normal space, avoiding the gravitational stresses that would tear apart conventional buildings. But it worked perfectly, generating more power than most galactic worlds consumed in a century. Meanwhile, back in the main galaxy, the effects of humanity's absence were becoming impossible to ignore. The 200 worlds that humans had inhabited were now barren rocks that contributed nothing to galactic civilization. High Arbiter Velthek read reports that grew more troubling each day. Food shortages on 17 worlds, his aide reported. Trade route efficiency down 40%. Innovation index at the lowest level in 3 centuries. "Surely other species can compensate," Velthek said, but his mandibles clicked nervously. "That's the problem, sir. Human colonies didn't just produce goods, they solved problems. Their farming methods, their manufacturing processes, their conflict resolution techniques. Without humans sharing new solutions, progress has nearly stopped." Worse were the reports of strange ships appearing at the galaxy's edge. Vessels that matched no known design, crewed by beings that refused to respond to standard communications, powered by technologies that seemed to ignore physics. Captain Lisa Hayes received the first official contact from her old galaxy in months. The message came through smuggler networks and independent traders who still maintained contact with human space. "Lisa, this is Admiral Peterson on the Galactic Patrol Ship Unity," the message began. "I know we're not supposed to contact you, but we need to talk. Strange things are happening out here, and some of us think humanity might be involved." Lisa shared the message with Dr. Ben Carter and Lieutenant Amy Torres on the bridge of the Defiance. They had become part of the archaeological team, studying the massive architect ruins discovered throughout the wild zone. "They're finally noticing," Amy said with satisfaction. "Good. Let them wonder what we're up to." Ben looked more thoughtful. "The question is, what are we up to?" "These ruins suggest the architects didn't just leave the galaxy. They became something else entirely. The ruins told a story that amazed and terrified in equal measure. The architects had been a coalition of species that refused to accept galactic authority. They had been exiled to the wild zone, just like humanity, but instead of simply surviving, they had transcended. Their technology allowed them to exist in multiple dimensions, to travel between galaxies as easily as crossing a room, to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. The ruins weren't just buildings, they were gateways to possibilities that the current galaxy couldn't imagine, and humanity was learning to use them. Dr. Sarah Mitchell made the discovery that changed everything. Deep in the central architect facility, she found a message left in a form that only humans could understand: music. The harmony was complex but familiar, built on mathematical principles that human minds grasped instinctively. When translated, the message was simple and profound. Welcome home, younger siblings. The universe is vast and full of wonders. The galaxy you left behind is just one note in an infinite symphony. We have prepared the instruments. Now make your own music. As Sarah played the message for the human leadership, ships began arriving from every direction. Not human ships, but vessels from galaxies so distant that light from them had never reached the Milky Way. Species that had made the same choice humanity made, who had chosen freedom over conformity and paid the price of exile. They came not as conquerors or refugees, but as family. The wild zone wasn't humanity's prison. It was their graduation ceremony. Commander Alex Brooks prepared his next message to the galaxy, but this time he wouldn't be speaking for humanity alone. Representatives from dozens of galaxies stood beside him, each one a species that had chosen the same path. The old galaxy taught us that conformity was survival. Alex said to the recording device, "We have learned that survival is just the beginning. Beyond your borders lies not empty space, but infinite possibility." He paused, looking at his new allies, beings of living crystal, creatures of pure energy, species that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously. You exiled us to make us disappear. Instead, you freed us to become what we were always meant to be. The galaxy, you know, is about to change forever. 3 years after the exile, the galaxy burned. The Krillian Empire had launched the largest war in galactic history, and their planet-killer fleets swept through system after system like a plague of metal locusts. High Arbiter Velthix stood in the Emergency Council chamber, watching red markers spread across the galactic map. "How many worlds have fallen?" he asked his aide, trying to keep the fear out of his voice. 47 systems completely destroyed, the aide replied. "The Krillians aren't just conquering, they're sterilizing entire planets. Billions are dead." Velthex's mandibles clicked in distress. The Galactic Council's response had been pathetic. Every military action required votes from hundreds of species. Every strategic decision took months of debate. And every deployment order had to pass through 17 different committees. Meanwhile, the Krillians moved fast and struck hard, ignoring every galactic law and treaty. Their war machines were designed for one purpose: total destruction of anyone who opposed them. "Sir," the aide continued nervously, "some council members are suggesting we contact the humans." Velthex's forearms trembled with anger. "Contact the species we exiled? That would be admitting we were wrong. With respect, sir, the humans had the most effective military in the galaxy before the exile. If anyone could stop the Krillians... Never," Velthex snapped. "We will handle this ourselves." But they couldn't handle it, and everyone knew it. Fleet. Admiral Monica Grant received the desperate message aboard her command ship, the Sovereign, hidden deep in the Wild Zone. The transmission came through smuggler channels and black market networks, coded and encrypted to avoid council detection. "Admiral Grant, this is Captain Reynolds of the merchant vessel Star Trader," the message began. "I'm not supposed to be making this call, but people are dying out here. The council won't admit it, but they need help. The Krillians are using weapons that violate every treaty ever signed." Monica listened to the message with her senior staff gathered around the bridge. They had been expecting this moment for months. "So they want our help," said her tactical officer, Commander Jack. Stone, the same people who exiled us for being too dangerous. Dr. Jennifer Lopez, humanity's chief diplomatic strategist, studied the intelligence reports they had been gathering. The irony is perfect. They exiled us for breaking their rules, and now someone else is breaking their rules so badly that only we can stop them. Monica made her decision quickly. We don't go back as humans. We go back as something new. Deploy the Ghost Fleet. Captain Derek Wilson led the first human ships back into galactic space in 3 years. His squadron of 30 vessels bore no human markings and flew under the flag of an independent mercenary company called the Wild Hunt. The ships themselves were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Built with architect technology, they could phase between dimensions, making them nearly impossible to target. Their hulls were black as space itself, and they moved with the fluid grace of living creatures rather than mechanical constructs. This is Wild Hunt leader to all vessels, Derek announced over the encrypted channel. Remember, we're not here as representatives of humanity. We're independent contractors working for whoever pays us the most. The first engagement came at the Battle of Meridian Gate, where a massive Krillian fleet was preparing to destroy the colony world of Haven Prime. The Krillian armada consisted of over 3,000 ships, including their most powerful dreadnoughts and planet-killer weapons. The human fleet that met them numbered exactly 30 ships that Captain Lavra Nelson commanded. The lead vessel Wildfire, a ship that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. All units, begin the dance, she ordered. What followed wasn't a battle in any conventional sense. The human ships moved like ghosts, appearing from impossible angles, striking with weapons that ignored shields and armor, then vanishing before. The Krillians could return fire. The Krillian fleet had been designed to fight enemies that followed galactic military doctrine. Enemies that formed battle lines, exchanged fire in organized patterns, and fought according to established rules. The humans followed no rules at all. That Wildfire phased through the hull of a Krillian dreadnought and fired from inside the ship's reactor core. The massive vessel exploded from within, taking 2 escort cruisers with it. Before the other Krillians could react, Wildfire had already ghosted away to strike another target. The human ships coordinated with perfect precision, as if they shared a single mind. They attacked weak points that shouldn't have existed, used tactics that violated physics, and fought with a unity that seemed impossible for independent vessels. Commander Pete Davis aboard the ship Shadowhawk targeted the Krillian command vessel. His ship materialized directly above the enemy flagship and fired a single shot that passed through shields, armor, and hull as if they weren't there. The command ship's bridge simply ceased to exist. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the Krillian armada was gone, not defeated, but completely annihilated. 3,000 ships reduced to drifting debris and glowing gas clouds. The human fleet suffered 0 casualties and minimal damage. As quickly as they had appeared, the human ships vanished back into the dimensions between spaces they left behind. Only a single message broadcast on all frequencies. The old rules are dead. Welcome to the new galaxy. The message reached every world, every ship, every listening post in galactic space. Within hours, it was being discussed in emergency sessions on 1,000 different worlds. High Arbiter Velthok stared at the battle reports in shock. 30 ships destroyed 3,000? That's impossible. The recordings don't lie, sir. His aide replied. The human vessels use technologies we've never seen. They move through space in ways that our physics say are impossible. And they just left? No demands? No conditions? Just the message about old rules being dead. Across the galaxy, the effect was immediate. The Krillian advance stopped completely, as their remaining fleets pulled back to defensive positions. Other aggressive species reconsidered their expansion plans. The careful balance of power that had defined galactic politics for millennia suddenly seemed fragile and outdated. But the humans weren't finished. Over the following weeks, more incidents occurred. Pirate fleets that had terrorized trade routes for centuries simply vanished overnight. Slave markets that had operated for millennia were found empty, their operators gone without a trace. Captain Lisa Hayes monitored the galaxy's reaction from her command center in the Wild Zone. "They're learning," she told Dr. Ben Carter. "The galaxy is realizing that everything has changed. Are we at war with them?" Ben asked. Lisa shook her head. "We're not at war with anyone. We're just showing them what freedom looks like. Some of them will learn to embrace it. Others will fight it. Either way, the old galaxy is ending." Reports reached the Council of Entire Star Systems, declaring independence from galactic authority. Species that had followed the established hierarchy for thousands of years were suddenly questioning why they needed permission to explore, to trade, to live their lives as they chose. The human example was spreading like a contagion of freedom, and there was nothing the Council could do to stop it. Dr. Jennifer Lopez prepared humanity's next diplomatic move. "It's time for the final step," she told Admiral Monica Grant. "We've shown them we can't be controlled. Now we show them what happens when nobody can be controlled." The galaxy was about to learn that rules only work when everyone agrees to follow them. And thanks to humanity's example, fewer and fewer species were willing to agree. The age of galactic government was ending. The age of infinite possibility was about to begin. 5 years after the Exile, President Lyndon Jackson stood on the Bridge of Liberty, humanity's mobile capital ship that traveled constantly through the Wild Zone and beyond. The galaxy had changed so completely that the old maps were useless. Where once there had been 847 species following strict rules, now there were thousands of independent groups, trading networks, and alliance clusters scattered across space. "Status report from the Confederation meeting," said her aide commander, Mike Torres. Linda looked at the holographic display showing representatives from 17 different galaxies gathered for their monthly council session. Beings of living light debated with crystalline intelligences, while energy creatures that existed in 11 dimensions offered their perspectives on trade agreements. "The Andromeda delegation wants to establish 3 new gateway stations," Mike continued. "The Quantum Collective from the Magellanic Clouds is offering to share their dimensional folding technology. And the hive minds from Galaxy 7 are requesting help with their overpopulation problem." Linda smiled at the controlled chaos of it all. "Any word from the old Galactic Council?" "They're still meeting, but most species have stopped attending. Last count was 47 members out of the original 847. The transformation had been faster than anyone expected. When humanity returned as the mysterious Wild Hunt and shattered the Krillian fleet, it proved that the old rules no longer applied. Species across the galaxy began questioning why they needed permission to explore, to trade, to live their lives freely. Commander Steve Harris led humanity's diplomatic corps, which operated more like a combination of traders, explorers, and cultural guides than traditional ambassadors. He had just returned from establishing contact with a species that lived in the spaces between atoms. "The microentities are fascinating," Steve reported to the cabinet meeting. "They experience time differently than we do. A single second for US is like a year for them. But they're incredible engineers. They can build structures at the quantum level." Dr. Paul Anderson, now head of intergalactic research, had made the discovery that explained everything. In a distant galaxy, he had found the architect homeworld and learned the truth about humanity's mysterious benefactors. "The architects didn't die," Paul explained to the assembled leaders. "They transcended. They became beings of pure energy that exist across multiple dimensions and universes. They left their technology as a test, waiting for species that would choose freedom over safety. The test had been simple but profound. Only species willing to risk exile, willing to leave everything familiar behind for the chance to explore. The unknown could activate the architect devices. The technology responded to a specific type of consciousness, one that valued freedom more than security. We weren't the first, Paul continued. The architects were actually a coalition of dozens of species that made the same choice we did. They were exiled from their various home galaxies and found each other in the spaces between. Linda absorbed this information with wonder. So we're following a path that others walked before us. Exactly. And now we're helping new species take the same journey. The final confrontation with the old order came when the remaining Galactic Council members made their last desperate attempt to reassert control. Fleet Admiral Chris Thompson received the ultimatum aboard his flagship Infinity, surrounded by representatives from over 10,000 species from dozens of galaxies. The Council's message was simple: submit to the established galactic hierarchy or face the combined military might of all loyal species. The fleet that assembled to enforce this ultimatum was the largest in galactic history. Every remaining Council species contributed their most powerful warships. Planet killers, star destroyers, and weapons that could crack space itself gathered in a formation that stretched across an entire solar system. But the fleet that met them was beyond comprehension. Ships that existed in 12 dimensions simultaneously floated next to vessels made of crystallized music. Beings of living energy piloted craft built from folded spacetime, while creatures that looked like geometric equations commanded fleets of pure mathematics. The human ships were scattered throughout this impossible armada, but they were no longer the strange exception. They had become part of a community that included wonders the old galaxy had never imagined. Admiral Thompson opened communications with the Council fleet. This is Admiral Thompson, speaking for the Free Confederation of Galaxies. You have demanded our submission. We decline. High Arbiter Velthok, commanding the Council forces from his flagship, tried to project authority he no longer possessed. You are criminals and exiles. The galactic order must be maintained. There is no galactic order, Thompson replied calmly. There are only living beings making their own choices about how to exist in an infinite universe. You can join us in exploring that infinity, or you can try to force us back into the small box you call civilization. The battle never happened. Faced with technologies that treated the laws of physics as suggestions and opponents who could exist in dimensions they couldn't even perceive, the Council fleet simply surrendered. But more importantly, they finally understood. The universe was too vast, too diverse, and too full of possibilities to be controlled by any single authority. The age of galactic government hadn't ended because of rebellion. It had ended because it was too small for what the universe had become. 6 months later, Captain Lisa Hayes stood in the observation deck of Freedom's Gate, watching ships from thousands of species and dozens of galaxies come and go through the dimensional portals. Her granddaughter, Lieutenant Amy Hayes, had joined her for the ceremony marking the 5th anniversary of humanity's exile. Grandmother, Amy asked, what did we really accomplish by being exiled from the galaxy? Lisa looked out at the impossible vista before them. Cities that floated in the heart of stars. Creatures of living mathematics teaching art to beings made of crystallized time. Ships that sailed on streams of pure possibility between universes that existed in parallel dimensions. They thought they were punishing us by sending us away, Lisa said softly. Instead, they freed us to become what we were always meant to be, not citizens of a single galaxy, but explorers of infinite space and infinite possibility. She pointed to a group of young beings from a dozen different species working together on a project that involved building structures out of compressed dreams. They voted to exile Earth because we wouldn't follow their rules. So we threw away the rulebook and wrote our own. We discovered that the universe doesn't need governments or hierarchies or authorities telling everyone how to live. It just needs beings brave enough to explore what's possible. Amy watched a ship phase into existence from a dimension that had no name, carrying passengers that existed as living songs. So we won? Lisa smiled. We didn't win anything, dear. We just stopped letting other people tell us what was impossible. And it turned out that when you stop believing in limits, there aren't any. The story of humanity's exile had become legend throughout the Confederation, not as a tale of punishment and redemption, but as proof that sometimes the greatest punishment becomes the greatest gift. The galaxy that had exiled them for being too free had learned that freedom was not something to be feared, that it was something to be celebrated across the infinite wonders of an unlimited universe.